Thanks for joining us for the city of Los Angeles, a third day of tension and violence. As night approaches, police and National Guard units are out in force. Federal troops are on standby. Violence in the city appeared to die down a bit today, but the toll is obvious. 37 people dead, more than 1,300 injured, more than 4,000 arrested. Damage estimate, $200 million and rising. 4,000 National Guard troops have joined the contingent of police and California Highway Patrol officers on the streets. More are on the way. A few hours ago, the man who's become the unwilling symbol of this outbreak of violence decided it was time to speak out. Rodney King appealed for peace.
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along? Can we stop making it horrible for the older people and the kids? And I mean, we've got enough smog here in Los Angeles, let alone to deal with the setting these fires and things. It's just not right. It's not right, and it's not gonna change anything. We'll get our justice. They've won the battle, but they haven't won the war. We'll have our day in court, and that's all we want. And just, I love, I'm neutral. I love people of color. I'm not like they picking me out to be. We've got to quit. We've got to quit. After all, I mean, I can understand the first upset for the first 2 hours after the verdict, but to keep going on like this, and to see the security guard shot on the ground, it's just not right. It's just not right, because those people will never go home to their families again. And I mean, please, we can get along here. We all can get along. We just gotta. I mean, we're all stuck here for a while. Let's try to work it out. Let's try to let's try and work it out.
King's attorney says King wanted to come forward sooner, but did not because he feared for his safety and the safety of others.
Los Angeles remains under a dusk to dawn curfew, and dusk is only a few hours away.
I'm going to ask you a question. Did you ever watch a baseball game or any sporting event, and you were so transfixed on it and so ready and willing to help your team win that suddenly, as that fly ball goes all the way up into the air and it's going for the outfield, and the other team, the team that you don't want to win, is hoping that it's going to be a home run. But you know that as that ball is flying up in the air, if you don't catch it, they might win. And you reach over the bar. Let's say you're sitting at a bar and you're watching this game with a bunch of other people who are all rooting for the same team. And you reach over the bar and try to catch that ball. You're so transfixed because you know if they lose 2 strikes, 2 outs, if they lose, they're going to lose the series. They're not going to win. It's going to be all over with. Well, at least in sporting events, even though they're mock armies, you've got next year. This year, we might not have anything. Next year, we might not have anything. But at least the country isn't going to fall if your team loses, because they're all teams on American soil. And aside from these games, we don't go around saying, except for the Red Sox and the Yankees, that you don't constantly hope that that other team is going to lose. Even if your team loses, you don't want that other team to win. That's wrong. Or you want the Boston Patriots to lose, which I want to this year for personal reasons. But you would do anything in your power, even though you're watching a television and there's nothing you can do. You don't belong to the team. You aren't in the city. You aren't in the stadium. Yet you would do anything in your power to catch that ball so that team, that rival team that's fighting against yours, is going to be out. They wouldn't be killed. Nothing bad would happen. But they just wouldn't win. And that's what's going on now. There are two teams playing. And one team is pulling all the stops out of the playbook. Every violent stop out of the playbook that they can. Not fair playing, not kind, not intelligent. But in a way it's intelligent, because if you put fear into people, people will either not leave their houses or they won't vote at all. But there also, there's several pieces of this puzzle. The name of the group, there's more than one group here that's going on. They all got different names. But these groups that are causing all this violence, it's the same playbook that we've seen before when we've seen countries fall. And there's one country that fell and is still marching to the communist drum. And there's nothing in the world that's going to take that dictator out of power at all. Enough people were killed. 78 million that we know of. 45 million in 4 years. And I keep telling you about this country. And I keep telling you about these many different countries that have adopted communism, socialism, Marxism. It's all the same thing. When Trotsky was down south of the border, he hung the priests off the ends of the trains. He's not for religion, it's anti-religion. So my heart goes out to all the Spanish people because they destroyed Junipo Serra's saint. He was a priest, Spanish. They destroyed his statue. He's out now, too. We thought to ourselves, well, they're destroying the Confederate statues. Of course they are, because they don't want any evidence left that these are all Democrats. If it's about slavery, if it's about segregation, if it's about putting one race above the other, well, they're trying to hide the fact that it was the Democrat Party that did this. But now they're doing it to people, Republicans. Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves, who was born extremely poor, was very abused by his father, watched his mother die in a horrible way. She just, decayed in front of his eyes. And then he didn't go to college, he just read books. Became a lawyer, then became president. So he's bad now, too. And Teddy Roosevelt is bad, even though he's the first environmentalist in this country, because huge sections of land, he said, no building on this. This is a wildlife reserve. We're going to preserve this land. Just because his statue is with a Native American and a freed slave. He was the first. I heard de Blasio today, and his name isn't de Blasio. It's Warren Wilhelm, which sounds very Nazi, and it makes a lot of sense because he is a Nazi. He said even though Teddy Roosevelt, adopted many progressive ideas, he's out of touch with today. He's not in the in crowd. It's like, what are you even talking about? He invited, against everybody's advice, Booker T. Washington, a freed slave, a man who started Tuskegee University, the first university for freed slaves to go to, which he hired George Washington Carver to be a professor there. And because they were so poor, he was a professor of botany, and he was a genius. He was basically self-taught. And he slept in a little tiny bed, never got married. And he took his class to the dump to find anything that they could use for lab experiments, biology. And he created everything he needed in the lab out of trash from a dump. So Teddy Roosevelt got flack for the rest of his life for befriending and bringing into the White House and into his administration Booker T. Washington. Brilliant. A man who said, don't think of yourself as a victim. Even though you were a slave, think of yourself as victorious, as intelligent. That's the past. Let it be the past. What wise words that every single one of us should be heeding. So why are they taking down his statue? Of course, they're Republicans. They're Republicans who actually fought against the Democrats who instilled Jim Crow, which also the Southern Italians and Greeks were considered black. They fell under. My family fell under that. You had to take black cabs. You had to go to black churches. You could not marry a white woman because that's how they saw it. One drop of black blood, you were all black. These men, these Republicans, you could say, were victorious, overcame the Democrats, won over what the Democrats were doing. And the KKK was in the North and the South. In fact, before the Democratic conventions, they would hold a rally, a KKK rally, and march right into the Democratic convention. FDR hired the first open member of the KKK to put on the Supreme Court. He was also a fascist Antifa. But, you know, you're going to have to take his statue down too, or anything with his name on it too, because first you have to erase history. You have to erase everything that we know of the Democrats, because you've convinced us that the Republicans are evil, and you also have to erase the history of the Republicans that shows that they're not evil. They're the opposite. Why are they erasing all history? Everybody who's watched my channel all this time, that's what every single communist dictatorship does. China. That's what Mao did. That's what Stalin did. That's what Pol Pot did. Anybody who admired the West was killed. You had to erase these people from existence and memory. You had to erase the history of the country. You killed the elderly people who could tell you the story of the history of their country. You destroyed artwork and poetry and song that told the stories of the history of your country, the sorrow and the victories. Everything is destroyed because there is nothing but the leader. Everything is gray. Everything is in khaki green. And the flag that flies is always red. Always red. I knew there was something that was coming about. 2 years ago, 2018. I'm into horse racing. And my favorite, of course, is Secretariat. I love them all. But Secretariat, very special to me. Well, I got suspicious of this horse called Justify right away. I said, what? He didn't run in his 2-year-old career. They're comparing him to Secretariat. Right away, I know there's something wrong. And then he was wearing white silks. White silks. Nobody, you couldn't tell. I couldn't tell by the colors he wore. What I dug and dug and dug and found out. I found out that the first 3 races that he ran, he was wearing the red silks with the yellow star of China. And you go, I got this feeling. Well, apparently the Chinese government bought the communist Chinese government bought this horse. And lo and behold, just came out recently that he tested 300 on a drug on the qualifying race to go into the Triple Crown. He tested 300, and this is a performance-enhancing drug. It can be found naturally, but it's only about 45 when it's naturally in the field. And since my father's family worked at the horse tracks, they have a turf manager that can simply glance at the turf, at the meadow where they're feeding. And if there's too much of performance-enhancing drug that they might be eating, that can disqualify a horse. In fact, all the horses will be running faster than they should, and they can get hurt. So they're always checking. So this just came out recently. Strange things happened with this horse. That all of a sudden, they started taking away horses that would be competition. They say, no, he's not going to run the Belmont, or he's not going to run the Preakness. He's not going to tax Justify. Because they saw in the Preakness he was getting taxed. And they promised the other trainers who had horses that were running for WinStar, that you'll get $25 million. If Justify wins. So lo and behold, the trainers decided not to run certain horses. And then when the Belmont hit that very morning, guess who was the secret owner of that horse? George Soros. Possibly the guy who's behind all this craziness that's going on. That first we were trapped for months, that the most sane of us on lockdown, law-abiding citizens, neighbors getting angry at other neighbors. You're going to make me sick and die. You're going to make my grandmother sick and die. You're not wearing a mask. People were turning against each other. And then, boom, George Floyd. We'll get back to the horse. George Floyd died, which I thought, he certainly was killed. He certainly was killed. A few months before, a white man was killed the exact same way. Tony Timba, one of the officers, there were several officers, stood there and watched Tony Timba getting killed the exact same way. One of them was African American. Nobody said a word about that. Nobody says a word about Chicago. Well, at least Black Lives Matters. Those lives don't matter. And then you saw, well, this guy, he's clearly, he's got his knee on George Floyd's neck. And it's in perfect placement in between cars where someone is standing with a camera filming the entire thing. Now, if you know that when these videos get out, as a police officer, these videos get out, riots ensue. People go crazy, especially people who have been stir crazy, people who are out of work, may never get a job again, are getting paid to do this. We know that they're getting paid. One of the people is George Soros. This is why the whole Chinese-owned horse, the whole thing ties together, okay? Why is it? And he knows what he's doing, and he's showing the camera what he's doing. And he knows that this is going to go all over. If you were anybody with 2 gray cells in your head, even if you wanted to do that, even though if you spent your life wanting to do that, and somebody was standing there with a camera, would you do that? Knowing you were probably going to get sent to jail. The rest of the officers watching were going to get sent to jail. Or are they going to get sent to jail? What's going to happen? Or are they going to get sent away and then we don't know whatever happens to them again? Will they have reconstructive surgery? It's too unusual. The country was doing too well. Trump, it was going to be a sure win. African Americans, Hispanics, minorities, women, the lowest unemployment in history. The country was too good. Too good. It's not going a bridge too far to think this whole thing was devised. Because why would you do that if you were an officer? And then when I saw Burka and Fauci, I saw them and I said, oh no, this is the end. Before they opened their mouths, I knew this was the end. The first thing I thought in my head, but I didn't say it because what if people die? Lots of people die. And dare you say that there's something askew about what's going on? I said to myself, Trump should really hire 2 other doctors, independent, who don't work for the CDC, who don't work for the government, just an independent team where they could all work together. They could all get on mic and say their piece, but they could all work together. But it turns out Burka lost her medical degree 10 years ago because she didn't keep it up. You got to get CEUs every year. You got to keep taking classes. You got to keep your studies up. Fauci screwed up the AIDS epidemic and said that Ebola would kill 1 million people and it killed 39,000. He hasn't been right about anything. And then we see him in January laughing on TV saying, it's never going to hit America. That's never going to happen. And in color to his face, he looked animated. He didn't get the news yet. He didn't get his marching orders yet. No, he didn't. So all these things, every time I see George Floyd, I think, why is he doing this when he knows he's being filmed? Why? You know what's going to happen. So let's get back to Justify. It's one thing I used to talk to my father a lot about. It was horse racing. It's one thing we shared in sports. You know, it was something I could, except for NASCAR. I just don't understand going around and around for hours. I can't figure that out. Sports, and it's physical, and horses and the power of the horses. I don't know. I don't know. Couldn't get into it. I told my father there's something bizarre, especially when they say this horse is like Secretariat. Said that about Arrogate. Poor Arrogate. But a bell goes off in my head anytime I hear that. Then I find the silks that he's wearing. The silks. The Chinese silks. The red silks with a gold star. I said to myself, China has been trying to take the lead, be the powerhouse of the economy, the powerhouse of the world. China, who beat their citizens tormented them so badly. Gangs like Antifa and BLM going out, torturing the middle class, the working people, the people who owned businesses, tortured them until most of them committed suicide. And of course, the Red Guard was eventually killed, as they're always killed in all these communist uprisings, because they're crazy. They're going around pulling down statues, breaking windows, stealing, looting, burning up buildings. They've got to have order. They've got to bring order back. First, you terrorize the populace. You bring down the population. In China, they had execution quotas. Even if you were a good communist, so many people had to die per day. All communist Marxist uprisings start like this. You have to lower the population. You have to have a controlled group of people that, just like you see with Kim Jong-un. And you saw the young girls that he sent to the Olympics, and they did this little dance where they would turn their heads, and each one of them was perfect. It was strange. It was like they were all machines, and that's what it's like in these countries. You have to be perfect, or else you literally get killed. That's what happens. But most of all, the brown shirts, the black shirts, the Khmer Rouge, the Red Army, Stalin's Red Army, the Red Guard of China, they all had to be killed. Those who start the revolution never end the revolution. They will kill most of the populace off, but still China has billions of people. They could kill and kill and kill, and they'd still have a couple billion people left. No matter how good you are, they will still kill you. But it's usually the people who are law-abiding that are left. The population is cold. The sick die off. You can't have the sick, you can't have the crippled. There's no equality. In fact, in China, it's very racist. It's a very racist country. But this is what you're patterning yourself against. Everybody's exactly as the same as they can possibly be, because no one can be independent. No one could have their own unique style of creativity. Nobody can stand out from the pack. The only one is the leader. That's why everyone has to be the same, because they all work for the leader. There's no happiness. There's no happiness. So, Triple Crown. Belmont is run. There's only a few horses in the race, not too many. most of the horses that could challenge Justify tire him out. They saw in the Preakness he was getting tired out by good magic and barely won. Get rid of those horses. So you don't want anybody to challenge Justify. And he's wearing his red silks with yellow star. The first thing I thought when I saw that, when I looked this horse up, I said that the Chinese Communist government wants to win and be victorious with America's Triple Crown. This is kind of like the World Series, the Super Bowl. They want to be triumphant. This is a sign from the Chinese government that they're coming in now to take over. And this is 2018. This is their sign. When those red silks and yellow star pass the finish line, it's a message to us. And that morning, we finally find out the secret owner, along with Communist China, is George Soros, the guy who funds all these riots, who funded the women, the Me Too movement, the Pussy March after Trump got elected. He and probably many others that we don't know yet. So there was a horse that was entered in the race. Baffert, who was the trainer of Justify and Restoring Hope. Restoring Hope, this is a distance stamina race, 1.5 miles. Restoring Hope had no business being in that race, and nobody could figure out why he was entering Restoring Hope in it. But you saw that Restoring Hope went wide and then came back in. And basically was right there, sitting right behind Justify. So there wouldn't be another horse coming to challenge him. Horses are only supposed to be run to win. Why Restoring Hope went wide and come back in? Not supposed to do that. And he won by 218 point something or other, which is about an average win. Definitely not Secretariat, 224 flat. That's a record that's been held since 1973. All 3 records he still holds. All 3 races. He's a red horse. Not Justify, a red horse. But his silks were blue and white. Dark blue and white. He was a red, white, and blue horse for America. What we needed. Vietnam War, Nixon, Watergate, horrible time, depressing time for America. Right in the middle of Watergate. He was on the cover of 3 magazines. That covered politics only. So, I told you about the reaching out, trying to catch that ball, to save your team, so your team will be triumphant. You're not in the stadium, you're not in the city. You're sitting at a bar, looking at a television set. But all your instincts go to try to catch that ball so that other team will have an out and you win. It's not, in this event, it's not just one team winning. It's all of America winning. We all want to be free. We all are equal. This whole nonsense about there are some people who are supremacists of all races. Religions, they think their religion is the best, or they think everything is the best. See, that's why communism, everybody's exactly the same. There's no God. I'm going to show you a couple things. You're going to get to know me just a little bit. I'll show you this first. Look at that. Prince, Purple Rain. Kasia Cortex said something very funny today. She said that Hispanics were black. Well, first of all, her last name is Cortez, and they considered the white people stepping foot on the Americas. They were Spanish. So you're directly related to those white people who brought Christianity and stopped the sacrifices and bloodletting that nobody talks about. In fact, Christopher Columbus, there's a book that was put into the public school system by Howard Zinn, and it was Obama that signed papers so a leftist agenda would be put in the public schools. And he wrote a bunch of lies about Christopher Columbus. One thing he did do, when he found out one of his men had cheated the Indians, he had him killed for cheating the Indians. So you kind of wonder about this whole thing. But he did leave his men there because he thought the Indians were completely without guile. They were good. And he couldn't find people like this over in Europe. He came back, and the men that he had left were sacrificed and cannibalized, and he was thrown in jail. So the whole thing about Christopher Columbus is a lie. Look at this. Isn't this cool? Purple vinyl. Now, most people say, okay, he's part black. He's part black. He's part white. And he's part Italian. You say, oh, he's probably part Spanish. No, he's part Italian. So we win there. Okay, the Italians win there. Not everyone. Ocasio-Cortez doesn't realize is that America paid Mexico, went to war with them, but paid Mexico for the land that they got. But the land that they got was conquered by the Spanish. It was not the land that was owned by the Aztecs. And they paid them millions of dollars for the land. And anybody who was living here from Mexico could stay here, and they could take as much land as they wanted to. People don't realize that. And as many Mexicans could come here, immigrate here, and according to the law, American law, up to the year 1980, all Mexicans were considered white. So they jumped ahead of the line. The people coming from Europe used to think, oh, they got more because they were white from Europe. No. Mexico was limitless. Europe, from the top, let's say the whiter countries, more people were allowed to come. But there was no limit for Mexico. Then when you got south to Italy and Greece, the numbers got less. Italy and Greece, Southern Italians, Northern Italians said that Southern Italians were half black. So Italians, Southern Italians, and Greeks were considered half black. And in the South, to the Democrats, that's all black. That's all black. So no, Ocasio-Cortez, Latino was actually considered white because it was Cortez, your ancestor, who came over here. But it's true, in South America, they celebrate Columbus Day and Spanish Conquistador Day because if it wasn't for the Spanish conquistadors, they wouldn't be here. But the Spanish conquistadors were considered white. But in America, let's say in America, Spanish was considered white. South Americans were considered white. Italians and Greeks, Southern Italians and Greeks, were considered black. So I have to correct Ocasio-Cortez. See how crazy things are and how crazy people are? when they don't know history, but history is being wiped out. Thank you to the Democrat Party. They're wiping out the good of the Republican, and they're wiping out the truth of the Democrat Party. But I would say download this video so you can show anybody that needs to be seen. I'm going to show you a couple things. As a little girl, I had some friends that were orphans from Vietnam. One was Lon. Her name was Lon. And then I got, oh, here she is. This is Lon. And she's actually Native American. I wanted this doll. And I had a lot of dolls. See, Warren, she doesn't know. She still thinks, I didn't tell her that Warren really isn't Native American. But of all the dolls and stuffed animals that I had, everywhere I went, Lon was with me. A Native American with a Vietnamese name. She slept in my bed with me because she was my daughter. And here's Tony. Tony is a very old, very, 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 very old stuffed teddy bear. And hand-me-down. His name is Tony. He's also named after a orphan from Vietnam. And I didn't realize that bears were totem animals, special animals to Native Americans. But I was a little girl, and these things just came naturally to me. I remember Jonathan. He was a little African-American boy on Sesame Street. And he would sit on the wall with Grover. And I said, "How old are you, Jonathan?" And go, "Phooey." And I thought to myself, when I get older, what I'm going to do is, I'll have one child that's my own, but I want to adopt children from all over the world because they're adorable. They're adorable. They're beautiful. I wanted children from everywhere. And so what I would do is I would play orphanage. I would put all my dolls and all my stuffed animals, I would put it on this little cot. And I would go every day and adopt more, as if I was adopting all the little children that nobody wanted until they were all adopted. And I didn't know about diversity. I didn't know that it was an in thing today to do. And people do it because they hang it on their sleeve, because this is the in thing. I was a little girl and I just did it. And I've even got African-American little baby dolls too. I've got more than one that I asked for, that I wanted. Because I just saw they were beautiful, they were adorable, and especially if they were unwanted children. They were in orphanages, and they all deserved love. Now, famous words by Rodney King. Rodney King, the LA riots. He supposedly was on PCP. And they say he was a big man and all the officers beat him and beat him and beat him. And it was too much. They overdid it. It was terrible. And he was just a poor man. And then they got off. They got off. So the LA riots started. And Rodney King said something very, very deep and so meaningful that we should all remember. And we forget today. It's almost like the last vestiges of Martin Luther King. And it's not the color of your skin, but the content of your character. He said, in those dying embers of Martin Luther King, he was looking down and he was shaking because the poor man had been beaten down. And he was also afraid of the riots. He was afraid of the looting and the smashing and the violence and Reginald Denny being pulled out of his truck, a white man being beaten to almost an inch of his life. And they said, do you want to bring charges against these men? He said, no, I understand why they did what they did. That's an amazing thing. Poor man, just a poor white man. But he understood. And then Rodney King said, can we just all get along? And he could barely look into the camera when he said that. And we thought that was the end. But the president did send out the military to stop those riots. 12 times the president used the military across the country to stop riots, to bring order back. It's not unusual, despite what these lying generals are telling you. It's not unusual. So I say to you, as a little girl who knew that Black African Americans suffered greatly, and it was just the day, I was always sensitive. Not once. I remember Barack Obama said that my grandmother was a typical white woman. She would cross the street when a black person was coming towards us. I thought, gee whiz, I never did that. My mother never did that. But I always thought to myself that I never wanted anyone to feel uncomfortable, because I knew racism existed. I knew some people were afraid of, especially men, because you see on TV, see what goes on TV. I would never cross, especially, and you always look at the person and you smile at them. Nothing ever happened. Because you always think about making the other person feel good, feel happy, feel accepted and comfortable. Gee, if we could just all get along and do simple things like that, and reach out, if I could. Oh, if you vote for me, I'll be your president, and boy, I'll stop those riots right away, let me tell you. I would go to the nth degree. Each one of us has to do that. Each one of us has to reach out as if we were catching that fly ball to make sure that the violent people who are trying to destroy this nation, bring on communism, and kill millions, which is always what happens, make sure there's an out. They don't win. All of us has to go that extra mile. We all have to go that extra mile, whether we're in the city or in the stadium or not. We're part of the team. We all are part of the team. We're all Americans and we all want peace. We're all human beings on this planet and we want peace. And we all have to go that extra mile. And when I was a little girl, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was going the extra mile. And to me, it was loving little unwanted children. But I got to have them all. I was the beneficiary. It made me so happy. Because they were all so beautiful. And anything that needs to be loved. What a joy it is to love, especially something that needs to be loved. You gain so much. Good night.
Rodney King appealed for peace.
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along? Can we stop making it horrible for the older people and the kids? And I mean, we've got enough smog here in Los Angeles. Let alone to deal with the setting these fires and things. It's just not right. please, we can get along here. We all can get along. We just gotta, we're all stuck here for a while. Let's try to work it out. Let's try to beat it. Let's try and work it out.